that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder how gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 370th edition of Energy Week. Today is the 7th of May, and we're covering news on energy and climate change from April 30th to the 6th of May.
That's what I got.
That's what you got. I am George Harvey, and the other voice you hear is the amazing Tom Fennell.
In the flesh.
In the flesh. And we are doing this because of the coronavirus. We're doing it from home. And Tom, you almost always have comments. I have to say where the information is available. Do you want to go ahead or should I?
Yeah, we got a picture coming here. I hope you have the picture.
We do, but I would say anybody who is watching this show can read the articles that we're talking about either at my blog, geoharvey.com, geoharvey.com. And you can click on the date that we're starting on the 30th of April, or there is a file that's uploaded to BCTV and from there to elsewhere. And there's also a link to the blog that we use to set the show up. It's almost a script. So you were going to say, Tom, I'm sorry.
Well, there's certainly some good stuff to look up. If you listen to the show, some of these things you will find very interesting. Some of them are very long. And I'll try to call out to your attention.
Okay, good.
So we got an amazing thing that we've never seen before. It's called a nodding donkey.
We've been seeing a lot of these guys lately. This one is, and the actual title on the article was had to do with sunsetting on a nodding donkey.
That's exactly what I have here.
This article is from CNN. What do you got for a title, Tom?
The world may never recover its thirst for oil.
The world is learning to live with less oil. The coronavirus pandemic has destroyed demand for gasoline and jet fuel as billions of people stay home, and there's no guarantee it will ever fully recover despite rock-bottom prices. The oil industry is bracing for the effects of the crisis to linger.
Well, we've been talking about this exact stuff, and we will mention it again. This came from CNN, by the way.
Yeah.
And they usually do a pretty good job.
They generally do, yeah.
And I got a little takeaway here. Citizens in once polluted cities, having become accustomed to blue skies, demand tougher emissions controls, encouraging governments to redouble efforts to tackle the climate crisis.
Yeah.
That's a mouthful.
It is. And of course, we've also got more behind this because people are learning to work at home in a lot of cases who have never done it before.
Yeah.
And people are learning that air travel puts you in a position where social distancing is next to impossible in many cases. And
absolutely.
You know, we're seeing the world is
the world will change.
Yeah, the world is going to change. There's no doubt about it in my mind. So should we go on?
Yeah, let's move along. We got another unusual picture here.
Yeah,
it's an offshore wind farm.
Yes. And this one comes from gcaptain.com.
That's what I say. Yeah. Never heard of them, but I picked it up.
I never heard of them either. I tried to figure out what I could about them and didn't learn very much.
Well, this is the title. Renewable energy helps utilities survive virus slump.
This is really interesting. Energy companies from Ørsted AS to Iberdrola SA reported robust first quarter earnings in a period that has been bedeviled by a slump in energy demand and a collapse of gas prices. Large wind and solar portfolios have so far protected those companies from the worst effects of the crisis.
Well, this is a quote from the article. There is complete consensus that the road to economic recovery must be green.
Well, that is something that I'm seeing a lot of. I don't see anybody writing articles saying we need more coal, oil, and gas. I just don't see it. And
Well, there's one more sentence here that I've got, a roundup. The article is a roundup of the key energy earnings from Ørsted, Iberdrola, Vattenfall, and Naturgy.
okay,
So show you what these companies are doing.
yeah. In a year ago, on the idea that the price of oil would go below zero, what do you suppose you would have picked as a number?
I don't know how long I would have left.
Okay, I think do you think you would have gone with 1 in 10,000, 1 in a million?
Something like that.
Okay, what would you have picked as a number if I'd said, what are the odds that the price of oil is going to go up to $500 a barrel?
I would say the odds are good.
Okay, now
I would have said the odds are good.
Here's the problem. If for these companies that are dealing and people who are dealing with fossil fuels, they're looking at this and saying, in a lot of cases, if the price of oil can go negative, what can happen to it on the up end? Because if they're dependent on oil or gas to power a fossil fuel powered generating plant, or to drive their fleet of buses or whatever it is, they have to be able to pay for the power. It's easy to pay for something that's negative, but that's not going to last very long. What if the price goes up? And this whole thing of the price going negative has made people who are dependent on the price of oil scared.
Say that again. I'm not quite sure I understand what you mean.
Price of oil went negative.
Yep.
And it scared the people who are dependent on oil because they know if it can go negative, it can go high many times that amount.
If it goes negative, it means they don't get paid for their oil. They got to pay to store it.
I'm talking about the users, the people who build natural gas power plants, for example. And natural gas prices are tied to the prices of oil. If you're going to build a power plant, would you build a natural gas plant right now knowing that the price of oil is so volatile that it can actually go negative for a period of days?
Well, the downside of that is it can go very positive high within the next few days. It's very uncertain, and companies are going bankrupt because of it.
Yeah, the uncertainty has become blaringly obvious. That's the point I was trying to make. Maybe I should escape from that. Do you want to go to the next one, or do you have more to say about this?
Let's move on to the next one here.
Okay.
It's more of the same. More of the same.
We have a coal-burning power plant. Imagine.
Yeah, we do. I've got it here. It's just that I got it hasn't come up on my screen yet, but there it is.
There it is.
Coal-burning power plant in Bergheim, Germany.
Yeah.
And what it says is here is the COVID-19 crisis will wipe out demand for fossil fuels, says the IEA.
Now,
You're going to tell us what the IEA is.
I am indeed. That is the International Energy Agency, and that is an agency that's in the UN. And I want to point out, this is not the EIA, which is the Energy Information Administration that is part of the U.S. Department of Energy, and it's also not, and this is the important one, the IRENA, which is the International Renewable Energy Agency. I want to point that out because the International Energy Agency used to be blamed a lot for being actually almost being so optimistic about fossil fuels that they sounded like they were promoting them. And here...
It's alphabet soup to me.
What?
It's alphabet soup to me.
Yeah. Well, they're not doing that anymore. The International Energy Agency said the outbreak of COVID-19 would wipe out demand for fossil fuels by prompting a collapse in energy demand 7 times as great as the slump caused by the global financial crisis. It said renewable energy will continue to grow.
I think that's pretty accurate.
I think so. And
well, there's a takeaway here is global energy demand was likely to plummet by the equivalent of the combined energy demand of France, Germany, Italy, and the UK. This is significant.
It is. It's a significant decline.
And there's a takeaway here is renewable electricity will be the only source resilient to the global energy shock.
See, this is the thing that is really important to understand. We're going to see this in the next article. Maybe I should hold off on talking until we get to that next article. Do you have more on this one?
No, I don't, and this one's coming closer to home.
Yep, it is. This is from Power Engineering Magazine, and we have a picture of the Indian Point nuclear plant.
Well, the article refers directly to that, and it says Indian Point 1 gigawatt nuclear plant Unit 2 is closing permanently.
And the synopsis I have says, tonight, April 30th, with the push of a red button, one of two operating nuclear reactors at the Indian Point Energy Center along the Hudson River north of New York City will shut down. The plant is 24 miles from Manhattan. Demolition is projected to cost $2.3 billion. That's billion with a B.
For sure. Came from Power Engineering Magazine.
It sure did.
Now, what I say about it is the 1,020 megawatt Unit 2 reactor will close for good. And the 1,040 megawatt Unit 3 will close next year in April 2021.
Yeah.
And the energy they are providing will be replaced largely by natural gas plants.
Yeah. I want to point out one thing that came up a lot in the news in the month prior to this closing was people saying we've got a pandemic going on. This is a bad time to close a nuclear power plant. And the thing that these people didn't understand is that right now it might be impossible. It might not be impossible, but it might be impossible to prevent the Unit 3 reactor from closing down because if it didn't close down in April next year, it would have to refuel. And it takes over a year to get the fuel. So it, at this point, is kind of touch and go whether they'd even be able to get the fuel.
Yeah, they would have to be ordering it, as you say, right now.
Yeah, they should have ordered it a couple of months ago, but they've made a deal that the plant would close, so it's probably going to close. The thing is, these nuclear plants are baseload plants, and people who say, and they still say, we need baseload power to know that we're going to be able to turn the lights on at 2 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday morning in the spring when the power load is the lowest on the grid. That lowest is the base load. And
yes.
Baseload power plants are designed to cover that load. And the thing that makes them what they are is that they have been built with the idea of efficiency of scale specifically for that purpose. And
historically, if they need more power, they've had to go to a peaking plant, and the peaking electricity has been expensive. It's
been expensive, but you know what happens if you have a pandemic like we've got, and the base load that you have expected is actually significantly greater than the real demand. That means that these baseload plants have to close, and it can take a nuclear plant a week or two to come back to power once it's closed.
Yeah.
And that's also true, but not quite as long for coal and natural gas baseload plants. And the result of that is that if the demand is that unpredictable, then baseload plants actually have to operate at less than full efficiency, which means that they become very expensive to operate. And then what's happening is we're seeing renewable energy coming on the grid that is cheap, and we're going to have an article about that later in this show. Solar power breaking but
absolutely. Well, it's happening. I mean, it's inevitable.
It's happening, and what's happening is that if you want to shut down a wind turbine or shut off a solar farm, you can do that. It's easy. And then if you want it back again, you just tell it to come back again. And if the wind is blowing in that particular place, you've got it. But if it isn't blowing in that particular place, it's going to be blowing someplace else. So,
well, the technology to store energy is rapidly advancing.
That's the other one, Tom. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head with that. You did indeed.
And that's going to change a lot of things.
Oh, is it ever? Okay, we are up.
Along here, we got a nice picture of some underwater things.
Underwater things. This is
It's like a clam in the middle there and a bunch of tubular life, I guess they are.
They're called tube worms.
Well, I won't call you a liar for that one.
We're up to Friday, May 1st, and this article comes from Clean Technica.
And it says, I quote, "The ocean genome helps fight disease. Here's how we save it." This is important.
It is. One thing that the authors of this, and there were like 5 authors for this thing, and the names made it sound to me like possibly not all of them spoke English as their native language. So I'm not going to blame them for this, but the word genome that they used is not correct here. What they really meant was biome. Genome is the genes in an organism. They're talking about the ocean biome where they...
Yes, they are.
Where they are talking about the mix of animals and plants. But anyway, to quote them, even though they're using this word a little incorrectly, the ocean plays a surprising role in fighting COVID-19. This is something I didn't know. The ocean genome is a rich source of antiviral compounds and enzymes from remarkable hydrothermal vent bacteria have been key to the technology in virus test kits, including those used to diagnose COVID-19. Who'd have thought?
Well, this is a long and informative article. This is a good article.
It's a good article to read.
You got about 3 weeks to read it.
Yeah. You know, I just noticed right next to that clam is a shrimp.
I didn't see that.
It's climbing on one of those tubes. It's looking up.
Oh, yeah, small. Yeah.
Isn't that funny? But anyway, that's and what they're saying is these animals and plants that live in the ocean, we need them. We need them in order to deal with problems that we have on land, and that makes that ocean, the ecology of the ocean, the environmental quality of the ocean, very important.
Well, there's something from the article. It's originally a quote from the World Health Organization.
Yeah.
It says countries need to do 3 things to successfully fight this pandemic: test, test, and test.
What was that second one, Tom?
Test, test, and test.
Okay.
Multiple threats face the ocean genome. Again, the wrong word.
Yeah.
Which is this is what they define it as: the genetic material present in all marine organisms.
Well, you know, that comes pretty close to being genome, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, the information it encodes is the foundation upon which marine ecosystems rest. Yeah,
maybe they got that word right and I got it wrong.
Well, this seems to be the way they're using it anyhow.
Yeah. Okay.
And the information, the article lists 5 ways to protect and share the ocean genome, which I'm not going to list here, but it's worth looking up.
Worth looking at, yeah. Okay.
Well, we got a nice picture here.
Yes, of a map of
the
the U.S.
U.S. with the U.S. shale plays in it. It's interesting to note that there's none in New England.
I was actually going to say that too, Tom. There are a couple of places where there's none, but we don't have to worry about shale oil or shale gas in New England. But you know, obviously the Marcellus play and so forth, the Bakken, which is in northern North Dakota and Montana, and
well, we don't have to go very far from New England because over the border in New York State, there's a very large play that begins down almost where the 3 states, New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania, come together.
Yes,
it goes right straight down into West Virginia, and it's a big play.
It is a big play, and it is one of the reasons why people, you know, the oil companies were very upset when the state of New York said, we're not going to allow you to do any fracking.
And this is all frackable stuff.
Yeah, it is. Okay, this is from CNN, and you have the keys to the title.
The oil bankruptcies are just beginning. Here's who could be next.
Wow.
Scary.
The oil crash is blocking U.S. fracking companies from accessing cheap credit that fueled their prolific rise. That reversal of fortunes could prove fatal for over-leveraged shale oil companies, and the weakest players are likely to get tipped into bankruptcy. don't worry. The economic stimulus will save these guys. You can do a lot with $2.2 trillion.
Oh, you can't do that. Well, the article here says that virtually unlimited borrowing allowed shale companies to dramatically ramp up production, whether that oil was needed or not.
Yes.
So U.S. prices now, at the time they wrote this, average just $30 per barrel, a price too low for virtually any U.S. shale company to turn a profit.
Yeah.
Now, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So no one wants to lend money to a shale oil company that can't generate enough cash flow at cheap prices.
And the shale oil companies are not borrowing money to do something that they're not already doing, except for one thing, and that is to pay off loans that they've already got that they can't otherwise pay off. That is bad. That's like supporting yourself on credit cards.
Well, there's one big wild card, according to this, and that's President Trump's promise to rescue the oil industry.
Yeah, well,
the next article that we're going to talk about is exactly on that.
Yeah, and well, yeah, okay. Should we go on?
Yeah, we might just as well.
Okay, our next article is on Saturday, May 2nd, and it comes from EchoWatch.
And it says the Trump administration sits on $43 billion intended for clean energy loans, while unemployment soars.
Why?
Yeah, well, you're going to tell us. There's a picture there of the Alamosa Solar Project in Colorado.
Yeah, I'll mention that too, but let me read the synopsis first. While the nation struggles to find ways to ramp up the economy so people can get back to work, over $43 billion in low-interest loans earmarked for clean energy projects stands undistributed by the Trump administration, according to the New York Times.
He's not spending the money.
Why would he do that? I mean, there's a stimulus, and this is money that had been already put in the...
allocated.
It had been allocated before the stimulus was needed.
Absolutely.
Those solar arrays that you see in this picture, by the way, the Alamosa solar array, those are not quite what they appear to be.
Oh, yeah?
Well, they're not regular solar panels. They're concentrating solar panels that are held inside containers where the sunlight is concentrated with Fresnel lenses. And if anybody doesn't know what a Fresnel lens is, it's a lens that has its surface stepped. And you see this, for example, in a lighthouse. There's a circular lens around the light, and it has steps in the glass. And the reason why it's got those steps is because they're not really all that concerned about exactly where that light is going. They just want it to go out. They could build a lens that was really, really thick, but what they do is they step it down so it's not so thick. And
they can make the lens really thin.
They can make the lens really thin. Sometimes you see that in the back window of a camper, for example, where there's a thing that's maybe a foot square and it's circular. That is a very powerful lens that gives the person driving the vehicle a picture out the back window, a broad angle picture. But those Fresnel lenses on these mounts that these things are on, each of which I think maybe carries 50 of these solar panels, are gigantic. And those boxes in the middle of the screen, I think, might be 5 or 6 feet tall. And
those are the electrical connections.
Those are the electrical connections. They might be 4 feet tall, but these panel assemblies on tracking mounts are probably 8 inches to a foot thick, and these are big. They're really big.
So these lenses are concentrating the solar, which would be raising the efficiency of the solar panels.
In most solar panels, it would destroy the efficiency by making them overheat, but this is a special kind of solar panel.
Well, there's a lot of people working on a lot of ideas, and some of them are going to be good ones.
Yep. But here we are. We have $43 billion in low-interest loans that could be made for clean energy, and the administration, for some reason, even though it's throwing money at conservatives that I've known, and I've always been kind of conservative, and I had a lot of conservative friends, would have been horrified at the idea of just saying, let's throw money at this problem. They talked a lot about how the liberals' solution was to throw money at problems. But what's going on in Washington now is not, I think, what they would have approved of, even though the last of them that I talked to, and most of those guys were getting old and have died. But he was saying, well, you know, we'll just see where this administration is going. I think he died a year ago, and I think he would have been very disappointed at the idea of throwing money at a problem. But these low-interest loans should be part of the solution, and they're not.
Well, they've been earmarked from Congress a long time ago, but he's not spending them.
Well, I think, in fact, he would prefer to see renewable energy go away.
I think he would, too. He's certainly not a fan of it.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's move on here.
Okay.
There's a picture of some very similar panels.
Yeah.
And the sign there says, "Have a sunny day."
And that's what the caption says.
Absolutely.
Which it says because I wrote it. Okay. This is an article from Clean Technica.
Houston surprises. 100% renewable energy will lead to $65 million in savings in 7 years. Huh?
Yeah. Mayor Sylvester Turner announced that the city of Houston, this is Houston, Texas, not Houston, Montana or something like this. This is a city. This is a big city. Has committed to purchasing 100% renewable energy through a renewed partnership with NRG Energy. The city will realize $65 million in savings over a 7-year contract that they signed.
Well, to give you some idea of the size of Houston, it's the top municipal user of renewable energy in the country. And it plans to power all municipal operations with renewable energy, which is estimated to see a $9 million reduction in its annual electricity bill.
Yeah. There you go.
So they're looking at this pretty closely, and they're hoping for some good savings.
Well, it looks like they're getting them. You know.
Yeah, it looks like they're getting them already.
Yes. You got more on that, or should we go on?
No, let's move on to the next one.
Okay, this is from Environment and Energy Leader, and we have a picture of wind turbines in the mountains.
It looks like that. Yeah, it does. Could have fooled me.
It fooled me. Well, there's a lake in the foreground.
Yeah, there is, isn't there?
Yeah. It's not terribly obvious given the colors we've got, but that's I believe that's what it is. If it is,
I think that's what it is. Yeah. Well, a report. Are you going to read that? International report makes business case for renewables investment.
Okay. A report from the International Renewable Energy Agency. Remember, I was talking about the International Energy Agency and not the International Renewable Energy. Now I'm talking about the International Renewable Energy Agency, which is called IRENA.
IRENA, yes.
Makes a business case for investment in renewables. It says future decarbonization is still possible despite the economic shutdown from the pandemic, and it highlights climate-safe options for investment.
I'll list those four because they're quick.
Okay.
Rapid decline in renewable energy costs.
Yeah.
Air quality improvements.
Yeah.
Enhanced energy security.
Yep.
And socioeconomic benefits. They all make sense.
They all make sense, absolutely. And, you know, enhanced energy security is something that I think the Trump administration doesn't understand. They think that if we pump as much oil as we can to the point that we're exporting it, that means that we are energy secure, but it still makes us dependent on oil and gas. And if we want to be dependent on something, it's a whole lot better, I think, to be dependent on the fact that the wind is going to blow fairly frequently and most of the time, and the sun is going to shine every day. And by the way, I should mention this because a lot of people don't understand it. Photovoltaic panels, the PVs that are used for solar power, produce electricity even when it's raining if it's daylight hours.
If it's daylight, they work. Absolutely.
They still work. All they need is light. They will not produce as much as electricity as they would if the sun were shining brightly. But, you know, a friend of mine who has a big solar array and batteries and is entirely dependent on that has told me that the batteries produce about 50% sometimes of what they would on a sunny day. When it's raining and dark out, they still charge the batteries.
Okay. Makes sense.
we are up to Sunday, May 3rd, and this is an interesting photograph of what is called MV Osprey.
Yeah, it's delivering jackets for the Moray First East Wind Farm. Moray First East Wind Farm.
Yeah. Tom, are you aware of what they call semi-submersible heavy lift ships?
No.
Well, this is what you're seeing in this picture is a
very unusual looking ship.
Yeah, that is a semi-submersible heavy lift ship.
Okay.
And it's called the MV Osprey. I was fascinated by this, so I did a little research on it. You'll notice that there are 2 tugboats pushing that ship up to the quay.
Okay.
That ship has 2 bridges.
I thought it did.
A bow bridge and a stern.
Yeah, it looks like that.
And the reason is because you know those big substations they put out on offshore wind farms?
Yeah, we've talked about them.
This is
they're like hotels.
Yeah, this is the kind of vessel that delivers them.
Okay.
And you know, as I went through pictures of these, it wasn't this ship; it was a different ship. It happened to be owned by the same company, OHT, which is Offshore Heavy. I'm going to say Transit, but it's a Norwegian company with an English title. But nevertheless, you remember the USS Cole, which got bombed by Al Qaeda years ago?
I don't remember that.
Well, it was an Arleigh Burke class destroyer.
Okay.
Okay, now my father was on 3 destroyers during the Second World War. One of them was Wickes class. It was First World War. It was a tiny bit more than 1,000 tons. The second and third were Fletcher class, and they were a little over 2,000 tons. But the Arleigh Burke destroyers, believe it or not, are over 6,000 tons.
They're big.
That's the size of a light cruiser.
Yeah.
And when the Cole was bombed and a big hole was put in its side, it was brought back to the United States for repair on a ship that looked like this.
Oh, no kidding.
And what they can do is they can submerge that ship so that flat deck goes maybe 10 meters below the waterline, and then float the ship that they want to transport onto it, and then lift it out of the water and go for a trip.
Well, that's interesting.
Isn't it? I saw another picture of a similar ship that was carrying 2 minesweepers. You know, I mean, this is a very different thing, but that's a 50,000-ton ship. And those stands are tall. You know.
Yes, big. They're big.
You know, they may be, I don't know. I'm going to guess they might be 12 stories, 15 stories tall. Okay, this article comes from Northern Times, and you, Tom, have the title.
Port of Nig takes delivery of massive offshore wind farm jackets for the Moray East development.
And one thing I should point out to anybody who wants to look at this article is that the Northern Times will not give you access to it unless you've got ad blocking off. Okay? Anyway, the synopsis is the heavy lift vessel MV Osprey delivered the first 8 out of 103 jacket structures to the 100-turbine Moray East offshore wind farm. The jacket structures will be taken to the wind farm site in the Moray Firth for installation. And the reason why 100 turbines need 103 jacket structures is because 3 of them are for the what are those things called? I just mentioned them.
Just talked about them.
Yeah, the
combination of a hotel and a energy collector.
That's what it is. But what do they call them? They call them. The word is just out of my.
We just talked about them, and I forget the word we used.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about this. A firth is a word meaning the same thing as a fjord or an inlet or a bay.
Yeah.
And a Moray Firth is in the far north of Scotland by Inverness.
Yes.
So it's way up there.
Way up there.
And did I read the title here? Yes, I did.
You read the word that we were trying to think of was substation.
Of course. Well, an installation vessel is going to lift these jackets that we see there into the sea and precisely connect them with pre-installed piles. So the turbines and the 3 offshore substation platforms, that's the word we were looking for,
Yeah.
will then be installed on top of the jackets. And they hope this to be operational by 2022.
And this is a big wind farm, 100 turbines.
Very large wind farm, yep.
Do you have the capacity of the wind farm? I don't know, but I would guess it's probably at least 500 megawatts, because those turbines are going to be at least 5 megawatts.
I don't have that number.
Yeah, but I just don't know. It could be double that.
Oh, they could be easily.
Yeah. Okay, should we go on?
Yeah, we got a nice picture coming up here.
I have a picture of the Mohammed bin Rashid Solar Park, and every time I look at this picture, I want to shield my eyes.
I wonder why they named it after him, huh?
I don't know.
Well, it's from Dubai, so they speak Arabic there, and they got a lot of Mohammeds.
That they do, yes.
Well, Dubai achieves, in case you were wondering where it was, it's in Dubai. Dubai achieves a record lowest tariff for a solar project. I think we've mentioned this before.
We have, but we're going to mention it again next week because another one came in. Dubai is, well, let me read this.
It's one of the Arab Emirates. It's right near the east coast of Saudi Arabia.
Oh, I thought it was. Oh, yes. Okay. Dubai achieves, Dubai Electric and Water Authority awarded the 900 megawatt PV fifth phase of the Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum Solar Park to a consortium led by Aqua Power, ACWA. The winning tariff, which was 1.6953 cents per kilowatt hour, establishes, so that's
less than 2 cents, baby.
Yeah, this is a little bit less than 1.7 cents. Establishes a new global benchmark for the cost of solar PV energy, and this is from the Arab News. And I will tell you that in next week's show, we will be bringing up the fact that this record low has been broken.
Already. Wow. I wouldn't have bet on that.
I would not have bet on it, but the interesting thing is this was to supply Dubai, and the new one is to supply Abu Dhabi.
Okay.
Which is almost in the same place.
Well, these used to be protectorates. They were British protectorates.
Yeah.
And they saved them from being part of Saudi Arabia, basically.
By making them into the United Arab Emirates.
Eventually, that's what they became.
Yeah.
Yep. And this article says that the solar park will be the largest single-site solar park in the world.
Yeah. By the way, the new tariff that broke this one,
yeah,
a little bit below 1.7 cents. It was 1.35 cents, so it was a huge drop.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing? But
the current operational capacity of this one is 1.013 megawatts. And the fifth phase will bring the capacity to 2.863 megawatts, with future phases to reach 5,000 megawatts by 2030. So they're not playing games here.
No, they're not.
They're pretty serious.
Yes.
And they got plenty. They still have oil.
Yeah.
They still have oil, so they're sitting pretty.
Yeah, I suppose they are. Okay, we should probably move on. We've got an article next on Clean Technica and a picture of a Modvion tower on a ferry boat.
That's exactly what we're seeing there.
And there's a good example of why a bridge is called a bridge in this picture.
I think you're right. It looks like a bridge, doesn't it?
The
sign on the back of the truck says long load, wide load.
Yeah, it sure does. Okay, what do you got for a title?
Modvion completes the first wind turbine tower in Sweden. We haven't talked about Sweden much at all.
No, but there's stuff coming up. Cross-laminated timber is lighter and stronger than steel. Now, we talked about this particular kind of tower, I think last week or the week before. But
we certainly talked about cross-laminated timber.
Yep, but there's more about it in this. It permits a narrower base for tall wind towers. The towers are modular and can be shipped in sections to be assembled on site, eliminating many of the transportation issues of wider steel masts. Now Modvion has built its test masts. These things, you can have parts of them and bolt them together, or however it is they're fastened, which means that you can where the tower is particularly wide, you can have that wide section divided into pieces that conveniently fit under bridges and things.
I guess that's what's going on here.
Yeah.
Well, the article says as the steel wind towers rise above 300 feet, the base diameters exceed 15 feet.
Yeah.
There's the limit for transport in most parts of the USA and the UL and the EU.
Yeah.
So these modular towers solve this problem of the base diameters exceeding 15 feet.
Yeah. And by the way, you know the bridge in this ferry boat.
Yeah.
Those types of bridges first appeared when sailing vessels started getting side paddles.
Is that so?
From the stern of the ship, where the control was done, because the wheel had to be was conveniently near the rudder, you couldn't see a lot of what was in front of you because of those side paddles. So they built a bridge from one of them to the other as a way to be able to see past the bow of the ship.
Okay.
Okay?
Interesting.
Move on.
Move on to Monday, May 4th.
Very good idea. And we have an article here from the Sydney Morning Herald.
A picture of some interesting trees that are called snakewood.
They are, and you know, I thought these things might have been about 5 feet tall until I realized those two dark things above the one on the right are birds in flight. And,
oh yeah.
And if you look closely, there's a couple of birds perching on the tree on the left. But what do you got for a title?
It says trees.
Yeah, they're big.
Well, it says that the West Australia watchdog Greenlights, the world's biggest hybrid wind and solar hub.
This is mind-boggling. It's so big. A 15 gigawatt solar and wind renewable energy project in Western Australia got a green light for environmental approval. The proposed Asian renewable energy hub would supply the Pilbara power grid. This is a region of Western Australia. And it would develop a hub for generating green hydrogen, which is going to be exported to Asia.
Well, this is significant. The $22 billion project features a 1,700 solar panel array dotted through with 37 wind turbines.
Maybe that's where the money went that the Trump administration is sitting on.
Well, they're going to commence construction, they hope, in 2026. So this is going to happen. This isn't going to happen this year.
Not quite yet, but the size.
But it's a big project. I was looking it up on the map, and it's very large.
Yeah, and 15 gigawatts is like, it's huge. We were just talking about how big the one in Dubai was, and this is
bigger.
That size.
Like
yeah.
what?
Okay, is that enough on that, or do we want to? Well,
we've covered it on that.
Okay.
We don't have a picture of the map where it is on the area, but this is huge.
It's huge.
Pretty large. It's about 50 miles square.
I actually went out to find that picture of the snakewood trees because I wanted to show a picture of what the ground is like on Pilbara. And the map, I think to most people living in the United States, that map would really not mean anything. So there it is. The next picture that we have is the BNEF LCOE chart for 2019. BNEF is Bloomberg Renewable Energy Finance, and LCOE is Levelized Cost of Electricity. And the article comes from Renewables Now.
And it shows what has been happening to the price of renewables and more particularly what's been happening to the price of batteries.
Yeah, this is astonishing. That price of batteries thing is really mind-blowing.
Well, it's declining prices over 10 years.
Yeah.
And you got batteries, you got offshore wind, you got PV, and you got onshore wind, and they're all going down.
And the batteries are going down at an average of 30% per year.
Well, people have been making a lot of progress on batteries.
Sure.
After about 100 years of nothing.
Yes. I think there's probably people in the battery industry who would say, Tom, we haven't just been sitting here doing nothing. But what do you got for a title?
It's time Coalition listened to experts on climate change and energy and plotted a Green New Deal. This is a long article, and it's very interesting.
Yeah. Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison often says he has yet to see evidence that lowering emissions fast enough to avert a climate crisis can be achieved in a way that doesn't create an economic crisis, too.
Well, he's got an axe to grind.
Huh?
He's got an axe to grind.
He's got an axe to grind. And, you know, I didn't put it up as a picture, but the picture that accompanied this article was Scott Morrison with his eyes closed.
Well, as you say, clearly he's not looking.
Yeah, clearly he's not looking. And
Well, the evidence has been abundantly available for years.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It can be found in the works of the International Energy Agency, the UN, the Australian Energy Market Operator, the big utilities, and any number of private and public think tanks and universities. And the article cites the sources to back that up.
Now, you know, Tom, when you and I started on our show, which was, I think, 2013, we were talking about how renewable energy would soon be so cheap that it would achieve what was called grid parity, and it would start taking over. And that's where
happening.
It's happening, and you can see it in this graph. We achieved grid parity for parts of the world 2 years ago, and for much of the world last year, and now they're saying for most of the world.
Well, the article says that wind and solar are now the cheapest option for new generation for 85% of the world's power supply.
Yeah.
The cost of wind has plunged 9% in the last 6 months alone.
Yeah.
Solar, like 5%. And battery storage costs, as you see in the picture there, are falling even faster.
Much, yes. We have to keep going, Tom. We don't have much time left.
No, let's take a good look at Deep Green's exploration vessel.
Speaking of deep green, have you ever seen a sea that was this blue?
I don't think so.
I don't either.
I've been across the ocean and it didn't look that blue.
No. Okay, this is from Clean Technica.
Well, oceans may be the best place to get EV battery metals. This is a very interesting article.
This is a fascinating article. A study which was commissioned by deep-sea mining company Deep Green shows it would be better to get the metals needed for batteries from ocean nodules than to mine them on land. There is less net cost to society and less environmental damage mining metals from the ocean. And they're talking about nodules, and they have pictures of nodules, and they
look like black golf balls.
Yeah, or I was going to say they look like the charcoal briquettes that you use for cooking in cookouts in the summer, and they're almost 100% valuable.
Here's where they're coming from. Polymetallic nodules on the sea floor, which apparently exist all over the place, can be collected without having to move rocks or dirt.
Yeah.
They're made of almost 100% usable minerals compared to ores mined from land, which have increasingly low yields, often below 1%.
Yeah.
And the land-based modules often contain toxic levels of deleterious elements, and they give very specific findings here.
They do.
It's an interesting article.
Interesting. Okay, we're up to Tuesday, May 5th, and we have a picture of a utility-scale battery.
You have to tell me that's what that was, because I couldn't figure it out by looking at it.
Well, this is actually only part of the battery, and
this is true.
It consists of a large number of battery cells.
All connected together. When you know what it is, it makes sense. But before looking at it, what the heck is that?
Okay, this came from Renewable.
California utility leaks 770 megawatts of storage deals.
We've had reports after report after report of these utilities making deals on large amounts of storage, and here it is. Southern California Edison has signed 7 contracts totaling 770 megawatts for energy storage, battery energy storage, to help enhance the state's electric system reliability needs and to integrate new renewable power. Most of the contracted battery projects are to be co-located with solar power plants, which makes perfect sense.
Makes sense.
Absolutely, it makes sense. And this again is one of the evidences that battery storage is cheaper than natural gas, and it is not only that, but it provides better quality electricity than natural gas does.
Well, it's really a match made in heaven.
It is.
The solar plants charge the batteries.
Yeah.
And then when the sun isn't shining, power comes to the batteries.
And the batteries can change output according to demand in tiny fractions of a second, where natural gas plants take a bit longer. And
a little bit, for sure.
Yeah, depending on the kind of plant, it might be a minute or 2 minutes up to 10 or 15 minutes. So,
Let's move on here.
okay, we have a picture of a solar array with a coal plant in the background, or maybe it's a coal plant with a solar array in the foreground. I don't know which, but
Something like that.
okay, this comes from Sour Energy, and I want to point out Sour Energy is not SOUR energy. It is SAUR energy, and SAUR in German means the same as SOUR in English, but I kind of suspect that this is neither German nor English because it's
Like sauerkraut, huh?
yeah, like sauerkraut. This Sour Energy is an organization in India, so I think it probably
that's interesting, yeah.
comes from a different source altogether.
Well, renewables top
Yeah.
coal in U.S. generation every day in April.
Yep. Data from the Energy Information Administration shows that renewables generated more electricity than coal every day in the month of April. This impressive stretch actually began on March 25th and is still going as of May 3rd. And by the way, it is still going today as we're recording this, apparently. This point was not expected to be hit until 2021.
Well, the figures are even more remarkable when compared to 2019's annual total of 38 days.
Yes.
So we've exceeded that.
Yes.
That was for the whole year.
Well, what's happened, of course, has been the coal-burning power plants have been shut down because, and this is, again,
It costs too much.
they cost too much, but that baseload power has to be there. It absolutely has to continue generating power 100%, or it's going to produce its power very inefficiently. And so what's happened is when the demand goes below the predicted base load, those plants get shut down. And it takes a long time to get them back up again.
I was just going to say, even though it takes a long time to get them up again.
This is a desperate move in a lot of cases. Shutting down a coal-burning power plant because there isn't demand is not a good sign.
It's expensive.
It's not, and it's not a good sign for the coal industry.
For sure.
Which,
Well, we've talked about it here. The coal industry is itself a fossil.
yes, I suppose it is. And we have a picture of the Hambach coal mine coming up.
That's an interesting picture. That's a very interesting picture.
Some of these mines in Germany,
It's a big mine.
yeah, some of them are bigger than the island of Manhattan. This thing is miles and miles.
And it's soft coal. It's lignite.
Oh, it's horrible. This is very dirty coal.
Very dirty coal. Well, Meyer Burger, which is the name of a company, plans 10 gigawatts. 10 gigawatts. Gigawatts is bigawatts. Of floating solar for the North Rhine-Westphalia area.
The CEO of Swiss technology company Meyer Burger said it is developing plans to build a factory in Germany to make photovoltaic panels that are up to 44% efficient. That's high efficiency.
24.
24. Yes, you're right. He said 10 gigawatts of the panels could cover the lake left behind when the Hambach coal mine closes. This is a Clean Technica article. And that coal mine is going to have to close sometime soon.
For sure.
So
as of now, the best panels you can get are 22.8% efficient from sun power.
Yeah.
So they're going to have to do something to get even better.
well, they've got the technology. We've got like 3 minutes to do 3 articles, Tom.
So let's move along then. We got another picture coming up.
Yep, this is from Neoen Solar Farm, and we are at Wednesday, May 6th, and we have an article from PV Magazine Australia.
And it says Neoen to build Australia's largest solar farm after a power deal with Clean Company.
French, huh?
It's CleanCo, I guess.
CleanCo, yeah. French renewables developer Neoen will build a 400 megawatt solar farm in Queensland after a contract to sell most of its power to CleanCo, a state-owned clean energy company, which is state-owned by the state of
Australia.
No, it's not Australia. It's
Queensland. Yeah, they just mentioned that.
West Downs Green Power Hub will be Australia's largest solar farm.
Well, that's largest exclusively solar.
Yeah.
Because we've talked about a farm's going to be much bigger than that.
And,
But it's
yeah,
detached.
but also is not going to be built for a little while.
That's true, too.
Our next article, it has a picture of a BYD electric truck and it came from Clean Technica.
Build your dreams.
That is a big truck.
It's a big truck.
And it's all...
California on the verge of making truck manufacturers produce electric trucks. They're going to say you got to do it, guys.
Yeah. California Air Resources Board released a final draft of the Advanced Clean Trucks Standard, a policy that will require truck manufacturers to sell electric trucks. There will be a 30-day public comment period followed by a board vote on June 25 to 26. So this is the final draft. They don't plan on changing this draft, but they are going to get public comments from people who say this is a great idea. It's a terrible.
This is what they're saying. This will require 4,000 electric trucks to be sold in 2024 out of roughly 75,000 total.
Right.
And the proposal will result in roughly 100,000 electric trucks in California in 2030 and 300,000 in 2035. But the policy alone won't transition the heavy-duty truck vehicle sector from one fueled by diesel to one fueled by batteries and hydrogen. It's going to take additional actions. So this is just a first step.
It's just a first step, but it's saying if it's a new truck, it's going to have to be like this. And our
4,000 of them anyhow.
Yeah, and our last article is from Manifold Times, and I chose this article just because I thought you'd get a kick out of it, Tom.
I did get a kick out of it. I was looking at a picture of it and say, what the heck is going on there? And it seems that those things are actually sails.
Yeah, well, they also have solar panels on them.
Solar panels on there. They got a word for it that I've written in here somewhere, but I can't.
Yeah, it's
energy sails.
Energy sails, yes.
And they turn around to face the wind.
Yeah, so they can pick up wind power or they can pick up solar power, and they'll work either way.
It's not enough to propel the ship, but it saves enormously on
fuel.
On fuel.
Yeah.
Well, it says the Aquarius Marine Renewable Energy Solution undergoes a feasibility study for an LR2 tanker, which means a large range 2. It's a pretty big tanker. Anything bigger than that is a super tanker. Yeah. 800 feet.
Marine renewable energy technology company Echo Marine Power, based in Japan, announced that it has started a feasibility study regarding the implementation of an Aquarius Marine renewable energy design for an LR2 tanker. And, I looked at this and I thought, wait a minute. You're powering a tanker with renewable energy? What are you carrying in that tanker? Oil?
Interesting. I didn't think of that aspect.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what it reminded me of. 20 years ago, I worked in a law office in Washington, D.C., and I was living in Winchester, New Hampshire, and commuting to Washington, D.C., and I'd go down, stay down there.
Long trip.
I'd stay there for a month, and then I'd come back for a weekend. And it was always by train. But while I was down there, I had a dealing with one of the lawyers, and I said, I have something I've invented. And I said, if it makes me a billionaire, it means that I would be able to exercise a desire that I've had for years to do something in each of 3 areas. And the 3 areas were high technology, ships and boats, and music. And he looked at me very puzzled, thinking, how in the world are you going to combine those?
I'd be pretty puzzled, too.
And I said, I'm going to build, if I have $1 billion, I would build the world's first nuclear-powered collier. Now,
nuclear-powered what?
Collier. It's a ship to carry coal.
Okay, that's what I thought you were saying. It just didn't make sense.
No, it doesn't. So he laughed at the idea. Of course, this was not serious at all. It was just a joke. But he laughed at the idea, and he said, what does that have to do with music? And I said, I would name it the Cole Porter.
Okay.
And for our younger viewers, Cole Porter was a very famous composer once upon a time, many years ago, when I was a little teeny kid. So there you have it. And Tom, I guess that's the end of the week. So we
just wanted to mention that picture of that ship, that whole ship is an experiment.
Oh, yes. It's an experiment.
They built it to test all sorts of technology. It's just the article.
Yeah. So it's time for us to say goodbye. So we will hope that you all come back next time and have a wonderful week in the meantime.
With that, I will say goodbye.
Goodbye.